Well, is it true that lever-action rifles are inherently less accurate than bolt actions? We hope to find out on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. We're going to cover a lot of other topics as well. You asked, we're going to try to answer. Hi, everyone. Once again, we're going to jump right in with some comments and questions from our patrons, and this is William. Hello again, Ron. Today, my question is about the new Supreme lever-action rifle that Henry is coming out with. My understanding of lever-action rifles is that they are generally less accurate because of the types of ammunition they shoot. Blunt-tipped, straight-walled cartridges, as well as something to do with the stock designs and the way that they attach to the barrel? Is it because of the feed tube? I'm not sure. I'm a novice. The new Henry lever rifle will be offered in 5.56. He's got .556. It's 5.56. .556 would be a pretty wide diameter bullet. Makes the 50 BMG take a back seat. But the 5.56 and the 300 blackout with a free-floating barrel, also a threaded barrel. My question is, what other variables are there to be considered for accuracy, and will the accuracy be comparable to that of a bolt gun? I already have an AR chambered in 5.56, but it would be really cool to have a suppressed coyote lever gun capable of taking relatively long-range shots confidently. Thanks, and once again, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. My pleasure there, William. So I wrote back and said, hey, good news, William. I have that new Henry lever action in 223, and I'll be testing it in a video within the week. Moreover, I have the Henry Long Ranger lever rifle in 223, and it shoots half MOA with some factory loads. The nearly identical Browning BLR is widely recognized as similarly accurate. In fact, last summer, one of those in 30-06 was the most accurate 30-06 of the 12 rifles that we tested. Tubular magazine rifles like the Model 94 Winchester and the 336 Marlin do have more accuracy challenges thanks to that tubular magazine you mentioned. That alters barrel harmonics because, well, it is touching the barrel, it's clamped on with that barrel band, and then when you run shells out of it, you change the weight and the balance. You've got all those cartridges hanging under the barrel, and as you shoot them one by one, you're changing the vibrations of that barrel. And then there's also that barrel band that squeezes on it. And the fore end is also loose. It's not a one piece, so you can't really free float a barrel very easily on those. We'll see if this new Henry lever action, the Supreme, does have a free floating barrel. And then there's also the triggers. And the triggers in lever actions are generally known to be more difficult to set precisely as compared to bolt actions. I don't know if that is absolutely true, but that's kind of been the reputation, especially in those older tubular magazine styles. So another one of the benefits with the new Henry as well as the older BLR rifle from Browning is that they have vertical stack magazines, just the same as you do on a lot of bolt actions. So you don't have that tubular magazine issue, but that's what gets toward those bullets you were talking about. You can shoot bottleneck cartridges and you can shoot sharply tipped bullets. But straight-walled cartridges with flat-nosed bullets do not inherently shoot inaccurately. That's not an issue at all. You can get those things to shoot remarkably accurately, any of them. So you don't have to worry about that. But we are looking forward to testing out that new Henry Supreme and just see how accurate it is. But I've got to tell you, I was almost dumbfounded when I shot half MOA groups with the Henry Long Ranger lever action rifle in 223 Remington. So it'd be pretty exciting to check out this new one. Jeremy writes, Ron and Betsy. Betsy, you're drawn out here. I hope he's not going to chew us out. Ron and Betsy, I want to say thank you for the wonderful shows you have given us in 2024. The information you shared on them helped me out this year. I started reloading this year, and the advice that you have on your shows, as well as through messages, really helped. I greatly appreciate it all. Even your book about the 7mm cartridges from around the world is a good reference book to back up. I have read that book several times now. Since I started reloading, I never realized how many different calibers are out there, or used to be out there. My eyes are more open now when it comes to the different calibers. It also made it to where I have more questions, lots of laughs. So, why is the 257 Weatherby Magnum, for instance, having rounded shoulders instead of straight angles? I should say it looks rounded. What is the difference between the 307 Winchester and the 308 Winchester? This is just to make a few of my questions. I want to say thanks again for the great shows, and I'm sure 2025 will be even better. Well, we're going to start it right off with you, Jeremy, and answering these questions. I hope we get them right for you. Now, Jeremy, Roy Weatherby rounded the shoulders on his cartridges. He called them double radius shoulders. And I pretty much think he did it as a sales gimmick. He might have thought he was improving some of the gas flow that was often claimed to be an inherent value in it, but really hasn't proven out to be that way. So I think it mostly that he was just trying to capture attention by having that double radius shoulder, something that would make the cartridge stand out and that folks could talk about. And boy, it sure seemed to work, because when I was a kid, we all talked about that and thought it was really cool. Double radius shoulder. Wow. It's got to be an advantage. Ballistically, I don't think it contributes anything. The 308 Winchester, now that's an interesting cartridge. It's the 308 case given a rim like the 3030 so that it would function really well in the Model 94 Winchester rifle. That's what it was designed for, and they called it the angle eject. They kind of upgraded everything on that good old lever action back in the 80s, and they made this 307 Winchester and the 356, and both of them sprang from the 308 Winchester case, but they put that rim on those. And they were able to get a little more horsepower out of those, but not as much as you would out of, I think, a bolt action, where you can probably contain more pressures. As I remember right, they did beef up the receiver where the locking lugs for the bolt came up. But of course, the bolt on those locks near the rear, not the front. And they always say that you get a little bit of stretch in a bolt that locks in the rear as compared to one that has those big locking lugs up front. So inherently, perhaps a little less energy or a little less accuracy from those, and maybe they can't withstand quite as much energy, but I really think that's probably not the case. They seem to hold up really well to high-pressure cartridges, but at any rate, the 307 was an idea to make those lever-action rifles shoot as well as a 308 bolt-action probably would. They never really seemed to catch on, and the 356 is probably a better option than the 307 in one of those lever actions, simply because it's a larger diameter bullet, and that seems to be an easier way to get the kind of increased energy on target that a lot of hunters want when they think of getting a more powerful lever action. Because of those blunt-tipped bullets that you still had to use, you just don't get the ballistic efficiency as you would with a regular 308. So you've got a blunt bullet on the front, but it's going to make that Model 94 a lot faster shooting, flatter shooting than you would have with, say, a 30-30. More powder in that case, for one thing. So those, I don't know, they didn't last very long. I don't remember when they quit making those, but they're fairly rare. And if you have one, I think you've got a really nice option. If you love a lever action, you like what the 30-30 does, or the 45-70, a 307 or a 356, I think would be real good options. You're going to, gosh, I think if I remember right, you're picking up about 200 to 300 feet per second more velocity out of that 307 than you did in the 30-30. So even though you're going to lose it fairly quickly because of the blunt bullet, at least you're starting off with some more. So something you might want to look for. The problem is something that Jeremy noted here later in his letter, and he said, how do I find ammunition for it? And I'm pretty sure Winchester still loads for it. If not, you're going to have to find somebody to hand load for you. And you would think, because the 308 Winchester is the parent cartridge, you would think, well, I could make cases out of that, right? No, because you have to have a rim on it. If it's a rimmed cartridge, you could turn the rim down to rimless and make one, but this is the opposite, and I don't know how you grow a rim on a cartridge. Somebody said you could take a 444 Marlin case, and it had the right basic dimensions and the rim that you could then neck it down, put a shoulder on it, and do a bunch of different moves with your presses and your dies to get a usable cartridge. But boy, that sounds like a lot of work. Hand loaders out there who really dote on that stuff might tackle it, but not an easy way to get ammunition. So that's pretty much what I can tell you about the 307 and the 356. Oh, one more thing. That 356 is, I think, more powerful considerably than the 35 Remington. And you know how many people really dote on that 35 Remington as the ultimate lever action. And yeah, that 356, same diameter bullet, but it's going to throw it a little bit harder. So you might want to look for one of those. And if you do find 356 Winchester brass, you can neck that down to make the 307. All right, now let's see what Yuki has to say. I don't think it will ever be gone. Oh, he must be talking about the 30-06. I don't think it'll ever be gone. What caliber is as versatile? Am I wrong in saying anything the new calibers are doing, the 30-06 has always been doing? When I wrote him back and I said, well, you're sort of wrong. If we're being honest here, yes, any 30 caliber that pushes bullets faster than the 30-06 can do the things the 30-06 cannot do. Whether we need any of those things, well, that's another question. Now, W.D.M. Bell, Karamojo Bell, proved way back in 1910 that a 757 Mauser was both effective and efficient at taking giant bull elephants. So why do we need the 30-06? Hunters want different options to increase their search, increase their reach, or to minimize wind deflection, or to do the same with less recoil, or with a lighter rifle, or a shorter barrel. As for the oft-cited versatility of the 30-06 with bullets from 100 grains to 230 grains, well, a 280 Ackley improved or a 7mm Remington Magnum can shoot 100 to 190 grain bullets, and if Bell's 757 pushing a 173 grain bullet would drop an elephant and Cape buffalo and pretty much everything else in Africa, well, then why do we need the 30-06? So there's versatility in other cartridges as well. And yeah, I mean, I can't argue with anybody who says, hey, the 30-06 is an incredibly versatile cartridge and it's as good as ever. Actually, it's better than ever, as I said in several of my videos. And I can't argue with anybody who wants to grab a 30-06 and hunt with it. The issue is that just seems like these days with all these new long-range cartridges and rifles, and especially the new rifle designs, you just don't find these new chassis rifles chambered for 30-06 often, if even ever. It just seems like they're all kind of the rage right now, whether or not that will continue. Many people who see my questionable videos about the 30-06 becoming or sort of heading towards obsolescence take great exception with that and chew me out quite regularly and say I'm an idiot and all the rest of it. But I just want to make it known to all of us that things may not be exactly the same as they've been for the last 100 years or so. With that cartridge, it's just getting long in the tooth. And even though modern bullets and modern powders have made it better than ever, the same thing has happened with all the other cartridges, so it's just kind of hanging in there in the same place. While it's still a great cartridge, I do think it's losing in popularity. And if you look at ammo sales, you'll see that. I think the top-selling ammunition is always a 22 long rifle. Duh, that's pretty obvious. But then you hit things like the 223 5.56 because they're so inexpensive and everybody has rifles chambered for those. And if you like to do a lot of plinking and things, it doesn't cost much. There's light recoil and all the rest. But then when you really get into the hunting bullets, the 308 Winchester is kind of replacing the 30-06. Most people say, why should I get a 30-06 when the 308 does the same thing or comes within 100 feet per second? And it's in a short action, and there's so many different rounds out there available from every manufacturer, and it has a reputation that seems to play out that is consistently more accurate than the 30-06. So those reasons and a lot more have pushed sales of 30-06 ammunition down toward like 7th, 8th, 9th position in sales. Now, some folks have pointed out, well, that's just because the 30-06 users hunt with it and they don't shoot that much. Probably. You're not going target shooting or long-range shooting with your 30-06, so you won't use as much ammunition. Doesn't mean it's not still popular as a hunting cartridge. So there are a lot of things to consider, but the thing that raised the whole issue with me was that I was having trouble finding rifles chambered for 30-06, new ones from manufacturers, when we did our 30-06 week last year. It just some of them didn't have any. It's like, you want an M30-06? Well, I guess we could make you one, but we don't have any. So, yeah, it's just something to think about. Okay, Paul. No one watching this video will ever see the end of the 30-06. Another 30-06 complaint. This is kind of what I was saying. I catch a lot of flack on this one. I have no idea why you'd even say that. Yeah, there are new things that are good, but hunting is a tradition to a lot of people. A lot of those people have a 30-06. So what's the young fella going to do for a gun if his dad or grandpa hunted with 30-06? Yeah, you see my point? High BC bullets do not change anything under 200 yards, and that's where most game is killed, under 200 yards. People are way too caught up in this BC stuff and how things are on paper. But most hunters can't shoot at distance anyway, and the BC starts to matter. Doesn't. Target shooting, well, that's another game. Yeah, you're right, Paul. That's kind of summing it up. If you're just a hardcore hunter and you're taking most of your shots at typical distances under 200 yards, all this high BC bullet stuff and increased velocity and everything else really doesn't matter. But my counterpoint to that is that it just seems like there are more and more shooters, especially new shooters and young shooters, coming on board who are not necessarily hunting. They're not coming at it from the same place that I did and you may have. They're coming at it to shoot steel targets. They're shooting up more ammunition at long-range shooting and different target games than they ever do at hunting because it's just becoming so expensive to hunt. And you've got a lot of travel. It used to be you could walk out the house if you lived in the country and start hunting. Or if you lived in a small town, you might have to drive a handful of miles and you were in the game. Whereas these days, gosh, a lot of us are taking week to 2 week trips just to go on a big game hunt someplace. And that really cuts down on sales of good hunting calibers and cartridges rather than target cartridges and calibers. But those are good points. So glad you made those for us, Paul. Who else do we have here? Mally. Mally says, I would be careful. Trichinosis can be deadly. Yes, this is the pig thing. We talked about a pig hunt we did a while back and made the meat into sausage. I even ate some of the straight up. Well, here's what I did. We got the pig, and a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't taste good. Wild pig isn't good. And I don't know. That's counter to my experience with all other wild game. I've always found that free-range wild game was tastier than a lot of the commercial meats that you get force-fed and kept in feedlots and different things. Most people who love beef will argue with me, but I often notice that pork has kind of an off taste, domestic. So I don't know why a free-ranging pig who's eating native plants and grasses and whatever else would necessarily be bad. So I shot this pig, and we cut some of the meat off of it, the tenderloins, fried it up real quick just to get the flavor test done. And oh my gosh, it was delicious, guys. Absolutely delicious. So then we said, okay, we're going to process the rest of this boar and eat him. And so we made a bunch of sausage, and I'm still eating on that. So that, I think, kind of settled it for me. But I did a little research because of this question about trichinosis. This is that cyst that's in the meat of a pig and a bear and a cougar and several other species. And if you get the cyst into your system, it gets in your muscles and causes all kinds of problems and can even kill you. Right, Betsy?
It's a parasite.
It's a parasite. And it's in the muscles, right? So this is a big concern, and I think this is why people say, ooh, you shoot a wild pig and it probably has trichinosis and you're going to get it.
And bear.
Bear is worse. Well, this is the research I did a little research. Whose website did I find it? It was a chef friend of mine. I met him years ago at the shows out of Minnesota or Wisconsin. Hank Snow. Did a lot of research on this and cooks up a lot of wild pig meat. He said, you would be shocked. If I remember the numbers right, he did research from the CDC keeping track of people who contracted trichinosis. From 2008 until 2012, there were only 84 cases in all of North America.
Well, if you're one of the 84 cases, that's a big deal.
You will get there. We'll get there. But that just goes to show how rare it is. And I take it back. It wasn't North America. It was only the U.S. of A. CDC. And a lot of us don't trust the CDC anymore either, but I would guess that they came up with some pretty accurate numbers on this. But here's the interesting thing. 84 cases, and that includes catching it from anything and everything. So only about 40 of those were from wild game, and most of those were from black bears, and almost, I think, 30 of them for one black bear, one incident. They shot a bear, they had a party, everybody partook, everybody got trichinosis from that one bear, not a pig. So what does that leave us for numbers? Very few feral pigs turn up having trichinosis. And there are cures for it now. You can take antibiotics. And the meat eater crew famously ate a bear raw up in Alaska a few years ago, and I think they all came down with trichinosis, but they didn't suffer much because they suspected that might happen, and they got the treatment. But people who don't get the treatment in time, I guess it is really bad, and you can die from it.
Right, but you should always prepare your meat and cook it to the...
Oh, yeah. Excellent point. And this is something interesting, too. I have always heard that if you bring the temperature of that meat up to 160 degrees, that kills all the cysts and stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. Turns out it doesn't even have to be that high. Further studies showed that 137 degrees Fahrenheit was enough, but you have to make sure you've got it through all of the meat, not just outside, deep inside, so you really have to be accurate. So I would say, to be safe, you'd want to hit with a meat thermometer, say 145, and that's still like medium rare.
I would go 160.
So you want to be like Betsy, you'd go 160.
Absolutely.
Actually, she'd go 260. Nurse Betsy's going to fry that thing to a crisp, kill all that stuff. The upshot is, guys, don't get freaked out and think, oh, these feral pigs are ugly, terrible tasting and everything else, and you're going to get sick from them. Not really. I am going to be doing a lot of more pig hunting from now on and bringing that meat home because, boy, it's sure tasty, and we love it in our sausage.
But we're going to cook it to 160.
We're going to maybe go to 150.
I'm the cook, 160.
Okay. And once again, we know who the boss is. 275 Rigby. Oh, I'll bet you this is in response to, I think the one or two podcasts back, somebody wrote in and said, stop talking about a 270 Rigby. There's no such thing. And he had lots of information about the 757 Mauser and the 275 Rigby cartridges are the same thing. They just stick the 275 Rigby name on a 757. Dimensionally, exactly the same. But he was saying Rigby itself never made this cartridge and said, here is the new 275 Rigby cartridge. And then they cleared it with CIP, C-I-P. I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's the European equivalent of SAMI over here. SAMI in the US of A is an institute that establishes standards for the arms and ammunition industry. And they say, okay, if you're going to load a 30-06, these are the dimensions for the case, plus or minus a small tolerance. These are the dimensions for the chamber of your rifle. And you got all the same stuff so that these manufacturers don't get in trouble making cartridges that are oversized or undersized and all that kind of thing. So the same thing with SIP, but I did some research and found that CIP did not have a 275 Rigby until 1984. That's what it had listed as the date of it being submitted. And if you go back and look at some rifles from Mauser, you find out all kinds of things. Let me finish reading the letter from this guy and see what he says. Okay, he says, hey, there's more to it than this, meaning what he heard me on the last podcast. The reason is not a SAMI cartridge is because no one paid to introduce it and have it standardized over here. Why not? Because it's not necessary, as it is identical to the 757 Mauser. But why does it exist at all? Well, it's because Englishman John Rigby refused to pay the German Peter Paul Mauser a royalty or to stamp Mauser on any of his guns. Ever wonder why some good cartridges die or exist on life support for so long, such as the 6.5 Grendel? Well, it's because they're proprietary cartridges, and some companies steadfastly refuse to pay the owner or will not stamp a rival's name on their rifles. This is why a lot of rifles are stamped 30 WCF instead of 3030 Winchester. Bill Alexander did us a huge disservice by keeping his design, that would be the 6.5 Grendel, to himself for so long. Lazzaroni and Dakota cartridges, same thing. Art Alphin from A Square was the opposite. He introduced dozens of former Wildcat cartridges to Sammy, for example, the 338-06. Okay, I read that, and then I wrote back. Ah, yeah, that's right, I do remember writing back to him. Betsy put it down here. She says, I wrote back and said, I wonder about some of your information there. Well, this guy's name was 6X Clean. I wonder about some of your information, 6X. You are certainly correct about proprietary cartridges not catching on, but some of your details might need some clarification, or maybe mine will. But for instance, the 30 WCF, that's Winchester Centerfire, and the 30 Winchester Smokeless were the original names for what became the 30-30 Winchester after years and years of other ammunition makers like Marlin and UMC producing those cartridges with different titles, like 30-30. Says just what you said. They wanted to avoid putting Winchester on their products. But to my knowledge, the 30 WCF and the 30-30 cartridge was never proprietary. I believe Winchester voluntarily relabeled it from 30 WCF to 30-30 Winchester, acknowledging that most people were then calling it. It's better to have 30-30 Winchester stamped on your rifles and ammo than 30-30 Marlin, right? I also wonder about this Rigby Mauser royalty issue, since Rigby was already buying Mauser actions and building his rifles on those. Up until at least 1910, Rigby rifles showed Mauser roll stamped right on top of the front receiver. My information indicates that Rigby changed this a year or a few years after 1910, perhaps influenced by World War I. It is also claimed that Rigby went with the 275 designation because the Brits didn't cotton to metric cartridge names. At any rate, I have seen early 20th century Rigby Mausers roll-stamped 275 bore, but so far I haven't seen any stamped 275 Rigby. But of course, I've not seen all the old Rigbys. I did check the CIP website, and I did find that 275 Rigby HV as a cartridge registered, and that was in 1984. Modern Rigby rifles are offered in and roll stamped with 275 Rigby, and Hornady is loading ammunition head stamped 275 Rigby now. I do have a photograph of an original Rigby's sales book, the sales record book. Found it at the I think it was at the Safari Club International show one year. They had it on display, and I took a picture of the page that lists a bunch of rifles sold in 1911, and each rifle was described as a Mauser Sporting Magnum or HV rifle, and the calibers listed were 350 Magnum, 303 High Velocity HV, and 275. And one of those sold on June 30th, 1911 as a sporting best went to W.D.M. Bell. That was Bell's original Rigby 275. So I think, for me anyway, the question is kind of still open. Was the 275 Rigby a real cartridge, or did they just relabel that 757 Mauser so that during World War I and thereafter, when they weren't too happy with the Germans anymore, they didn't want to give them any free advertising? I doubt that there was this royalty thing, because they were so readily buying Mauser actions to make these. Wonder what happened during World War I. They probably didn't get any Mauser actions in to build new rifles with. They were probably putting all of their rifle production into military rounds in those years. If anyone else has more information on this, it's kind of boring to a lot of folks, but historically it's kind of interesting.
Right. When you got your single shot, you thought about getting it in 275, but then you didn't want to go to Africa with.
Oh, yeah, that's another great point. If you guys are thinking of getting a classic 757 Mauser, which I heartily recommend, I just love it. Great little cartridge, obviously. And you have to decide between the romance of the 275 Rigby. I mean, that sounds really classy. 757 Mauser, but if you go overseas, in most countries, you have to check in your rifle and your ammo, and the ammunition has to match the rifle. In other words, the roll stamp on the rifle will say what the chambering is, the caliber. 757 Mauser. That has to be the same on the base of your case. needs to say 757 Mauser, not 275 Rigby. Well, if you made your rifle in 757 and thought it'd be cool to name it a 275 Rigby, you would have to make sure you have some brass that is roll stamped on the head 275 Rigby, and that's kind of hard to find compared to 757. So when I was having this SD10 rifle from Park West Arms made up, I talked to Ward Dobler there at the factory and about this, and he said, yeah, it would be cool to have 275 Rigby, but really it's a lot more pragmatic to go with 757 Mauser. So I did that. And sure enough, it shoots just like a 757 Mauser or a 275 Rigby, but it's a Park West Arms SD10. Oh gosh, this rifle stuff, nomenclatures and such, it gets confusing. Let's see. This is somebody writing in about a video I did on can Winchester's new rimfire cartridge equal the .22 long rifle? This guy says he is LMAO, laughing his off. And he's from California? BS. This is a little challenging to understand here. If, in quotation marks, nothing will dethrone the 22 LR. What happened to the 17 Super Mag? Didn't know there was one. Lots of laughs. Who is going to change a barrel for this BS? Out of touch with reality. 38 Special, 357 Mag will stand the test of time. A proprietary bullet with no ability to shoot in 22 LR guns will be gone in a blink of an eye. Whew. Let's see if we can interpret some of this stuff.
I can. It was regarding.
Yeah, I know what it's regarding.
Okay.
Right. But nothing will dethrone the 22 long rifle. I absolutely agree. Now, I don't think it's trying to. Guys, the 21... forgot the name. Oh, the 21 Sharp cartridge from Winchester is not trying to dethrone the 22 long rifle. The reason that they designed it was for people in what this gentleman calls California, to be able to hunt small game and varmints, ground squirrels and such with rim fires because they have to use copper bullets over there. And a 22 long rifle with a copper bullet is just not all that effective, especially at distance. So they came up with this option, which ends up shooting, in my tests, out to 75 yards, pretty much the same as a 22 long rifle would with a 40 grain bullet. But you're using a 25 grain copper bullet in the 21 Sharp. And a lot of people think somehow that this cartridge is trying to defeat the 22 long rifle, put it out to pasture, etc., etc. That's not the point, guys. The point is to give us options if we are stuck in areas where we cannot shoot traditional lead bullets in a 22 long rifle. Not going to dethrone the 22 long rifle, not trying to. So don't get too excited. You don't need to call BS and LMAO and all these other things. It's just another option that they've been good enough to provide for us. And I compliment Winchester for doing that, because I can imagine it's not going to sell 1 billion copies, but there are people who really want to continue their small game shooting with rim fires, and here's a nice option for them. Don't have to buy one if you don't want it. Stick with your 22 long rifle. I'm certainly sticking with mine because here in Idaho I can use them. So that's all that's about. All right, let's see. Oh, here's something about field shooting positions video we did. Ron, if you could wear a mic, we could enjoy and focus more on the video rather than constantly adjusting our volume. Love the content, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. This was E-Justic. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes my mic either stops working or it falls off or we've got it covered up with a coat. The other day I did one with a shotgun, and there's a magnet on this microphone. And the magnet grabbed the gun, and then I was moving the gun around, and my voice was going in and out because my magnet was riding along with the gun, and I didn't even realize it. Crazy stuff happens out there, guys. We are not pros. We're just trying to do our best, and sometimes our best isn't good enough. But thanks for noticing. We will try to clean things up. As a matter of fact, we are working on getting some videographers, so Betsy doesn't have to play videographer.
Yay.
It's kind of hard because the both of us are trying to play content in front of the camera, behind the camera, running the cameras, sometimes 2 or 3 of them at once, and the sound equipment. And we often drop the ball on 1, 2, 3, or all of it.
I am very excited about that.
Yeah, Betsy's the one who's been saying, we've got to get a videographer. We've got to get a videographer. I say, they cost money. Videographer costs more than we're going to make. Oh, boy. But we'll see. We're making progress. We've got some young folks who want to come on board and work with us, and I think it's going to work out pretty well. They're excited. They work hard. They got some good ideas. They're pretty creative, so we're getting pretty excited about all that. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, let us hear from Remington, who is in Pennsylvania. With a name like Remington, what rifle brand are you going to shoot? Well, let's find out. Good morning. My name is Remington. I have always had a deep respect and love for the outdoors and the wildlife of Pennsylvania. Well, good for you, Remington. I recently have decided to try and find a lifelong career in wildlife conservation. I would greatly appreciate any information on how I can get my foot in the door. Good one. This is timely because just last podcast, I held up a book about this very topic, written by a friend of mine who is a wildlife biologist and had a great career. And he's about the same age as I am, so he's kind of retired now, except for he isn't because he's continuing to do all kinds of projects on the side. And he wrote this book that gives life lessons on what to do to get a good career in wildlife conservation management. It's really a well-written little book. Pretty easy read, pretty quick, just short little pages on life lessons. For instance, choose a good wildlife school with great professors. Try to research who's the best in the field and study under them. Drive toward your passions. Don't just take a job for a job. If you're interested in terrestrial animals, try to focus on that. If you're interested in fisheries, go to the fisheries end of it. Forestry, all that sort of stuff. Develop multiple skills. Don't just think you need to know the science. How are you going to communicate your message? You should be able to run a camera, a still camera, take some really good pictures, write competently. So take some classes in writing in English and grammar, speaking. You're going to probably have to do some public speaking to really advance your career. At any rate, this book is available on Amazon for about $17. I don't remember the exact name of the title. I don't have it here anymore because after I covered it last time, I gave it to a young teenager who was interested in this. And I said, here, read this. So search for Carol, Carrol, Henderson, and Handbook on Life Lessons in Wildlife Conservation or Careers in Wildlife Conservation and Management. Those search words should pop it up for you on Amazon, and you can pick that up.
Or listen to last week's podcast.
Oh, yeah, go to my podcast and it'll be on there. Oh, Betsy, you're so smart. Hey, Remington, glad to hear you're interested in this. We need good conservation officers and biologists and folks that are really working for the conservation of wildlife. The only reason we can still hunt today is because a lot of people like that had a vision and they saved our wildlife from market hunting and abuses of all kinds and started the National Wildlife Refuge System and all that wonderful stuff. And we are beneficiaries of that today. We need to keep up the good work. This is Dan from Vermont. Ron, I love the podcast and never miss an episode. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. We appreciate that. I heard you on Big Woods Bucks out of Maine. That's another podcast. They called me and we did an interview. Some great guys over there. I heard it there and I couldn't believe that two of my favorite podcasts were in one place. Okay, now here's my question. I have a Remington Model 673 in .308 Winchester. I'd like to rebarrel it to .358 Winchester. I wanted to go short with it, so I'm thinking 18-inch barrel, as I often hunt thick areas with close shot opportunities. I'm wondering, what would be a good profile for the barrel? I want to make it a good lightweight tracking gun, but should I go with a heavy barrel profile? Do heavy barrels shoot heavier weight bullets better? Or is the only advantage better heat dispersion? Or would I be okay with a medium profile barrel? Thanks, Ron, for your awesome content, Dan. Well, Dan, I'm no expert on that, but I really don't think you're going to get any significant improvement in this short-barreled rifle for, I think, short-range work. If you want to go to a .358 Winchester, you're going from a 30 caliber to a 35. That suggests you're thinking of moose and big whitetail bucks in heavier cover. And you want that bigger 35 caliber bullet. So your shots are probably going to be pretty close, right? Out to 200 yards, I don't think it really matters. Even that .358 Winchester shoots fairly flat out that far. But you're going to give up some velocity, as you know, with the shorter barrel. But in close, it's not going to even matter that much. So the barrel, heavy barrels are for increasing accuracy to bench rest standards, not hunting. And whether the barrel heats fast or slow really doesn't matter, because you're probably going to go bang and you're done, or maybe bang, 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 and you're done. So there's no advantage in having a barrel that doesn't heat up as quickly. You're going to be carrying more weight around. That might tire you out if you're one of these Maine hunters who gets on a track and goes all day hard. Whew, the weight's going to make a difference. Now, I have a lot of ultralight rifles, and some of those got that way by shaving that barrel down to what we call pencil-thin barrels. They really are pretty thin. And those will shoot 3 shots into less than an inch, some of them even a half MOA. It's crazy accuracy. Yeah, they'll heat up after the 3rd, 4th, 5th shots, then they start opening up a little bit. But I'm done by then with a hunting rifle. So I don't think you need to get a heavy barrel on it. Because it is a shorter barrel, of course, it will be lighter just because of that, but then you're putting that 6-7 ounce suppressor up front. And that short little backcountry, I think, is a good one. Do double check if they offer that in 35. I have one in 30 caliber. Great, love it, but I don't know if they make those in 35. Do you want to check that out? But I think you're on the right track here. I would even consider, if I'm right in assuming that you're going to be hunting this really tight cover, and you want a rifle that's still short, handy, compact, and quick to use, you might think about a 16-inch barrel. And then you add that 5.5-inch backcountry to the front of it, and you're still fairly reasonable in your barrel and your entire rifle. So good luck with that one. Let me know how it works out for you. All right, this is from, oh boy, Smithers, British Columbia. That is a great jump-off town for hunting in the wilderness. I have jumped out of Smithers, 3, 4, 5 times on hunts for mountain goats, stone sheep, moose, caribou. Great country up there. And this is Mason, who is fortunate enough to live in Smithers. Hi, Ron and Betsy. I bought a copy of your 7mm book, autographed for a friend's birthday recently. It was well received, thank you. My question is about the Browning BLR rifle. Do you know if the lever throw is the same on a long action as a short? Meaning, is it geared differently so the lever moves the same amount regardless of the length of the cartridge? Thanks, and keep up the good work, Mason. Good question, Mason. Now, for folks who may not be familiar with the BLR, this is a lever action rifle. This is one of those that has the vertical stack magazine instead of the tubular magazine, so it's modernized, shoots sharply tipped bullets in 308, 243, things like that. But I think you get the long actions, I know you can, in 30-06 length cartridges. And that we shot in our 30-06 week programming last summer. That rifle was the most accurate of all tested. And most of the others were bolt actions, and some of them were pretty pricey, target style almost bolt action rifles, and yet this little lever action beat them in accuracy. It shot pretty close to some half-inch groups, if I remember, 3/4 for sure. So it's pretty impressive stuff. But this works differently than the Marlin or the Winchester traditional tubular feed magazines because it has a rack and pinion system. When you move that lever, it doesn't directly pull the bolt back and then drive it forward. There is a rack and pinion system. So the top of the bolt, or is the bottom of the bolt has notches in it, and they line up with notches in kind of a wheel on the upper end of the lever, and that ratchets it back and forth. And I think it's on a 2-to-1 ratio. I wasn't able to find out exactly what it is. And this is why he's questioning this. How quickly have they geared that thing to move the bolt back faster? Is it different from the short action 243 size to the 30-06 270 size? I don't know the answer. I don't think so. I think they just shorten the bolt, and the holes, the ratchet holes underneath the bolt and on the drive mechanism, I think, are the same. But I could be wrong. Anybody out there know the answer to this? We might have to go to Browning. See, if I'd had some time to research this, I could have called somebody at Browning and found out. But that's kind of the price we pay for doing these off-the-cuff answers here. So that's why I'm saying, guys, let me know if you know the absolute answer. But I would say this, Mason. I have found that action is so fast that I don't know that I'd worry about it. Gosh, you know how quickly you can cycle a 30-30 or a 45-70 in the 94 or the 336 action rifles. and you use this rack and pinion system, and you make it even faster, good Lord. I can cycle those things pretty quickly, and I'm not exactly 25 years old anymore, so most hunters, I think, that shoot lever actions can pretty much keep up with autoloaders. Wouldn't surprise me if you could get 5 shots off within less than a half second different than somebody shooting an AR. I may be a little bit wrong on that, but the point is, more than fast enough for hunting. You cycle that thing, you pick up your target again, takes a little bit of time to get a good sight picture, you shoot again, you're ready to get right back into business. Besides, you're going to kill them on the first shot anyway, so. Well, thanks for that, Mason. We'll find out if anybody else can write in and clue us in next time. Now, hey, we're staying up in Canada. We're going from British Columbia, just right over the top of the Rocky Mountains, into Alberta, where we have Mark. And Mark says, "Hello, Ron. My name is Mark, and I'm from Alberta, Canada. What did I tell you? I am a new hunter who has been learning so much from your podcasts and the great wealth of knowledge you're willing to share with newbies like me. I took my first deer this year. Well, congratulations, Mark. While hunting with my cousin using a 308 Winchester. It was a life-changing experience, and I believe I am hooked for life." That is so cool, Mark. Glad to hear it. Yeah, that first deer really does something to you, doesn't it? Man, enjoy your hunting career. I'm glad you've got years and years ahead of you. I have been thinking of adding a new rifle to my arsenal, and I've been looking at a 7 Rem Mag. How does the recoil compare to the 308? And would this be a good choice for a guy like me? Or would something bigger like the 300 Win Mag make more sense? I would like to continue deer hunting and maybe do some elk and black bear as well. Thanks for your time and consideration. Keep up the great podcasting, Mark. Well, Mark, great question there. Now, I think most folks who listen to me regularly know that my kind of ideal all-around cartridge is a 7 Rem Mag. A lot of other ones are just right there with it, but, if you have to pick one, that one works pretty darn well for me. The 30-06 is another great option, but you didn't suggest you were interested in that. You went the next step up to the 300 Win Mag, and that is actually going to give you about 300 feet per second more velocity than the 30-06. So if all these 30-06 folks are saying it's the greatest cartridge ever and the most versatile, you're only going to have things improved by having a 300 Win Mag. Question is, do you need that much horsepower? Is it going to give you a significant advantage? My studied opinion is that it will not when compared to the 7 Rem Mag. In other words, those two are so close that I think you can go with the 7 Rem Mag, shoot a little bit lighter bullets using the modern high-end controlled expansion bullets available these days, and get the same terminal performance on game, including the big bears and elk and moose, that you would with the 300 Win Mag, with a little bit less recoil. How much recoil? Between a 308 and a 7 Rem Mag, you really can't just give a blanket number because what cartridge or which bullet are you shooting and at which velocity? Let's say you're going to use full house loads as fast as you can get them. The 308 is going to be, 200 to 300 feet per second slower than the 7 Rem Mag with similar weight bullets. You're going to have higher BC in those 7 millimeter bullets because they're narrower. So it's going to shoot faster, flatter, drift less in the wind. You have all these ballistic advantages. And the recoil is going to be, I'm going to guess you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 or 9 foot-pounds of energy increase with a 7 Rem Mag. That's not a lot. That is about like what you get out of a 22-250. So add that to the recoil of a 308, I don't think you're going to really much notice it. The 300 Win Mag, that'll kick it up probably another 8 to 10 foot-pounds. So there's almost a 20 foot-pounds difference between the 308 and the 300 Win Mag. But again, it depends on the bullet weight you're shooting. So consider all that stuff. But more importantly, I find that any experienced shooter who really trains right and has a rifle that fits him reasonably well does not notice recoil with a 7 Rem Mag or even a 300 Win Mag. The first time you step up from a 308 to a 300 Win Mag, you'll notice the difference. But once you get used to the idea that, not the idea, but the reality that that recoil really isn't that bad, you end up with, like a lot of friends of mine who are small framed. Many of them are women, and they have no problem shooting a 300 Win Mag or a 338 Win Mag, and a few of them are shooting 458 Winchester Magnums. And one of them up in Alaska, I think her only rifle, the one she guides with, she is a guide in Alaska, and she carries a 416 Remington Magnum. Shoots everything with it, including sheep, stuff you wouldn't need it for. And she doesn't complain about the recoil. So it's mostly a mental game and learning how to shoot. And I think you can do that. So good luck. You will not go wrong with either one of them, the 7 Rem or the 300. A lot of guys are going to say, well, the 300 Win Mag's way better option. And it may be on paper, but I have found that in the field with the right bullet, it really isn't. All right, Ryan from Alaska, it looks like. Moose Pass, Alaska. Well, yeah, we're working the North Country here today. I'm liking this. Hi, Ron. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm trying to expand my knowledge base from being a one-rifle hunter to having some more purpose-chosen rifles for different hunts. I have lived and hunted in Alaska since 2015, and I chose a Tikka T3X. Boy, a lot of people choose that one. And it's chambered in 300 Win Mag for my do-all tool while I lived on Baranof Island. I wanted something to kill mountain goats and black-tailed deer while still being capable for a run-in with a brown bear. Having taken all of the above and moose with this gun, I consider it a wise choice. However, I'm looking for a more compact, lighter, recoiling mountain rifle that I could reasonably use for sheep, caribou, and goats. I have landed on a Browning X-Bolt Speed in 6.5 Creedmoor, shooting something in the 140 grain range. I haven't purchased it yet because I'm wrapped around the axle about either getting the 18-inch barrel, suppressor ready, or the standard 22-inch barrel. I'm concerned about the loss of velocity in the SPR version and when not equipped with a suppressor. Otherwise, I would have bought it already. So my question is this. You do gain some velocity when you equip the rifle with a suppressor. But since the suppressor is not rifled, what is the impact, if any, on accuracy? Say with a 5.5-inch suppressor like the Banish Backcountry. It seems like having 5.5 inches of unrifled barrel with a potentially good deal of freebore would negatively impact accuracy. Still, I'm admittedly a neophyte regarding the finer points of equipment and accuracy, so I hope you could illuminate this for me. Thanks for the great show and considering my question. Well, thank you, Ryan, for a good question. I have found that suppressors, I would probably go with 80% or more of the time I try them, slightly improve accuracy, sometimes significantly. I think it has more to do with adding a little weight to the front of the rifle and changing the harmonics a little bit than anything else. But for some reason, they just seem to improve accuracy most of the time. And the few times that they did not, it wasn't a huge deal. And I don't think it has much to do with the bullet going through that, what you call free bore, which is just a larger bore size. That bullet comes out and goes down the opening. It's fairly tight, but it's not so tight that there's any contribution to an increase in velocity. Maybe a slight amount. I've heard something about the jet effect and whatnot all, but I just consider it to be a wash on pretty much all of it. I don't think you need to worry about it. The bigger concern is carrying this thing around, adding weight to the rifle, or more importantly, length to the rifle. But gee, once you're up into up in the tundra, it's not like you're trying to fight your way through the thickets, so I don't think a longer barrel is going to hurt all that much. But yeah, I would say select what you think is going to be most convenient for you. You're going to enjoy carrying it. Consider the balance, a little bit muzzle heavy when you put that suppressor out front. Choose it that way and don't worry about the accuracy. I think you're going to be just fine. Now, you might want to consider a little bit larger cartridge in that 6.5 Creedmoor, just in case you do come across a grizzly up in that country. Sheep country, I've come across grizzlies many times up there hunting sheep and moose and caribou up in the Alaska range and the Wrangels and the Brooks range and all those northern mountain ranges. So you might feel a little more confident with, say, a 7mm .08 Remington. That's a good short action option, and you can shoot some heavier bullets in it. And that's another thing in my experience with bears and such. The penetration is the biggest issue. not having a bullet that carries 6,000 foot-pounds of energy. You just need that bullet to be hard enough to penetrate to the vitals of a bear, because there have been plenty of bears shot with big, heavy bullets from big, hard-hitting cartridges that just keep coming if you don't break down the skeletal structure or hit the central nervous system. You're going to get into the heart and lungs, and you're going to have to give that animal some time to lose his blood pressure, essentially bleed out. So a good 28 caliber bullet that drives deep, like 175 grain Mauser partition, Swift A-frame, any of the bonded bullets, and any of the copper bullets, the heavier sizes, I think it'll be just fine. Not as easy to get that kind of performance out of a small 26 caliber 6.5 Creedmoor especially. So something you might want to consider. All right, now who's up next? From Colorado, we have Philip. And Philip is asking about camo. Oh, in some videos, Ron, I see you wearing a mottled cream-colored camo-ish coat. No alliteration intended. Oh, but good alliteration anyway there, buddy. I like it. What brand is that coat you're wearing? Thanks for your time, Philip. Philip, that is a weather wool, what do they call it? All-around jacket. The weather wool all-around jacket. Weather wool is just a small mom-and-pop operation out of New Jersey, of all places. But they wanted to make high-quality merino wool garments. And this jacket is that. Their products are just, I think they're all made here in the USA. I'm not sure where they get their merino wool, but they try to have all the work done in the US of A, and I like that. And it is definitely high quality. They don't cut any corners. And you can imagine merino wool isn't exactly cheap. So this thing's going to set you back, but I am really impressed with that jacket. It is so rugged and durable and well designed. If you think of the price of the thing is getting up there toward $1,000, but if you think about all the hunting jackets you've gone through over the years, I'm wearing one off and on now. It's starting to wear out, and I've had it for about 5 years, and it's already wearing out, getting holes in it, just getting thin and everything else. And you think, this thing cost about $200, I think it was, $200 or $250. And you add that up every 5 years, and you've got that wool jacket covered. Only the wool jacket's still going. I would think this jacket is going to be handed down to the grandkids. So if you can cough up enough money up front for something really durable that's going to last a long time, this is something that will do the trick. So you might want to look into it. A lot of guys are interested in it until they see that price, and I can understand that. But yeah, it's one of those pay once and never pay again kind of deals. All right, let's see. Now we're going to warm up a bit after all this Alaska and Canada and the Colorado stuff. We are going to Florida, down to Miami, where Adrian writes, "Hi, Ron. I hunt deer and hogs in Florida, and I don't care a rip about merino wool. No, and I am in the market for a rifle. All my game has been taken with a bow. I hunt a lot inside of swamps with maximum shots at 50 yards. And sometimes I get on the prairie edges where I can shoot as far as I'd like. But I really like the 7 Rem Mag and the Tikka T3X Lite. There you go with that Tikka again. Tell you, gosh, it's just like the most popular bolt-action rifle out there. But I don't see a rifle like that being very good for 20-yard shots. What can I get that would work for a 20-yard shot, but also for a 150, 200-yard shot on a deer or a hog? Well, your Tikka T3X Lite in 7 Rem Mag. There's no issue with having a 20-yard shot with any rifle. I don't care if that rifle is 30-30, that's good to about 150 yards, or a 338, 378 Weatherby Magnum, that is good to 1,000 yards. It doesn't matter if you're shooting stuff close with a rifle. It's just a close shot. It's a gimme. You shouldn't have any issues with it. Yeah, I don't know what your concerns are about it, but it'll work just fine. You do need to select the right bullet. If you get a fairly frangible bullet with full velocity that close to the muzzle, you're hitting that animal with a lot of energy in that bullet, and that's where you get this classic bullet failure in which the bullet breaks up into many little pieces and might not get inside. But I doubt that there are many, if any, frangible 7mm bullets that wouldn't get inside, driven out of a 7 Rem Mag. I think you'd be all right with it. I would pay a lot more attention to which cartridge is going to do well for you at that longest range you're going to be shooting. And really, 200 yards isn't all that long. You could easily get by with a 708 Remington or a 308 Winchester, something like that, because your drop differences at 200 yards between them, negligible. But if you want to go to 400 yards, you're going to start to get advantage out of that the bigger 7 Rem. So, all right, thanks for that, and good luck down there in the swamps and prairies of Florida. I have never hunted the prairies of Florida, but I have hunted some of the swamps. All right, this is John from Utah. Hey, love your podcasts. I really enjoyed the interview with Doug Adams. That's the gentleman who makes the bells that we ring for our Camo of the Week. He is a longtime friend. Well, I'll be darned. For the question I have, are the less expensive guns and barrels, do they last as long as the higher-priced guns, such as the Tikka? Can one expect the same barrel life out of a $500 gun as a $1,500 gun? Thanks for your time, John. Yeah, John, the barrel life isn't going to change. Barrels are pretty much barrels. They're made out of generally the same steel. You can get a chrome moly barrel, you can get a stainless barrel of some kind, and there's really no advantage in having an inexpensive or expensive barrel. The expense in a barrel is more to do with how they make the barrel. Is it hammer forged, button rifled, cut rifled, and that sort of thing? And then how much precision do they use to make those? They can do a fairly sloppy job or a really fine job. And some of the custom barrels, they will make an air gauge the dimensions internally within several hundred thousandths of an inch or something, meaning that the variability in the bore diameter and the groove diameters does not vary down the entire length of that barrel by more than 0.001 or some crazy number where you can hardly even measure it. That suggests it's going to be more accurate. And about as far as wearing out, they don't really wear out. Barrels burn out at the throat. Right in the front, you fire your cartridge and all that flame temperature is at its peak, right where the bullet gets into the rifling in that throat. So all the heat is trapped right there, and it raises the temperature of the steel. And you know how temperature works on sidewalks or anything else, and they expand and they contract and expand and contract. So the more you shoot, the more of that expansion you're getting, and there come the cracks back there, and then the fire burning cracks it some more. But there's also the powder that acts about like sand blasting. You've still got granules of powder that haven't ignited yet at the front end. Down at the base of the cartridge where the primer is, the fire starts, the powder burns, and it burns forward, but at the same time it's pushing the top powder out of the case along with the bullet. And some of that powder then is slamming against the rifling edges and cracking it and chewing it up like sandpaper. So that's what's going on with your barrels, and I don't think you're going to see any kind of a difference between a $500 starter rifle and a $8,000 top-of-the-line rifle. So I hope that answers the question for you, John, and I hope you get to hunt and shoot enough to actually try to burn out a barrel. I haven't done it yet, but then I've got so many different rifles that I've used over the years that I've really never put 5,000 rounds through any one of them. Probably haven't even put 1,000 rounds through any one of them, but I'm sure had fun trying all the different ones. Man, that looks like everything for today, except for the comment of the week. We're going to put our heads together here, Betsy and I, and figure out who's going to win that one. We'll be right back. And now it is time for the comment of the week. And I am torn. Betsy and I debated this, and we're going to give it to 2 comments of the week. One of them is the upside, Remington, who said he's interested in getting a career in wildlife conservation. Of course, we really support that. So thank you for that comment, and good luck getting into that career. We really need good conservationists for the future. And
I like the name Remington.
Oh, and Betsy likes the name Remington. That's why she wanted to go for it. I think the perfect name would be Remington, Browning, Winchester, Ruger III. Something like that. But I like to give it to T. Bobman. This is the gentleman who chewed me out and said it was a bunch of BS and stuff about the 21 sharp replacing or displacing the 22 long rifle. This I like because it gives us a chance to explain what's going on, because a lot of people see these new cartridges and you immediately imagine this, that, and the other thing, and we're trying to sell them a bunch of junk and how dare you do this and that, and you're just trying to make money off of us and all the rest. gives me a chance to say, look, the gun and ammo companies are not working against you. They're not trying to steal our money. They're giving us options. The reason all these new cartridges pop up is not to try to displace the previous one. They can sell rifles chambered for anything. They can sell all the ammunition for whatever you want. It's kind of demand. Now, certainly these companies do want to create a little bit of buzz and get the interest up so that you get off your seat, quit watching football games all day, get out in the field and shoot, because then they'll sell more rifles and ammunition. So yeah, there is some of that, but that's not working against us. That's working with us. Don't you enjoy a new rifle that you like to shoot? Don't you enjoy good ammunition? I don't want these companies to go out of business, sell a lot of rifles, sell a lot of ammunition. There's 11% excise tax on all the ammo and rifles, and that money goes to help wildlife conservation. That gives us more to hunt. So we're going to give our comment of the week to both T. Bobman and Remington. Thank you guys for writing in. Until next time, the rest of you, keep your nose to the grindstone, hunt honest, and shoot straight.